Right, welcome to the semifinals of Grand Prix Phoenix. Gary Wong with blue-white devotion. Oh, looks like we're going to need to update our headers here. So we've got Jund Monsters against Mono Black, Thoughtseize.
Yeah, so it looks like we have William Levin here playing one of the Mono Black devotion decks. We'll take a look at whether it's Brandon Berkovich here, because I believe Brandon Berkovich was the other Mono Black devotion deck, and it looks like he may have won his quarterfinals there. So the turn one Thoughtseize revealing, leaving William with a hand of Courser into Stormbreath Dragon, and followed up with a Temple of Silence there.
So do you think he held the Thoughtseize, or is that do you like to hold the Thoughtseize against a Jund Monsters deck, or just run it out there turn one?
I think the fact that you can nab Sylvan Caryatid may want me to just play it a little earlier,
Sure.
but if you have a Devour Flesh, maybe you don't care about the Caryatid. I could see waiting. The fact that he didn't play a Temple turn one makes me more inclined to believe he just drew the Thoughts, or just drew the Temple.
Right. There's Courser of Krufix. So William with a Domri in hand and a Courser decides to start things off with a Courser of Krufix and sorry, it's not Gary Wong, the Mono Black player, Desecration Demon turn 4.
Yeah, Desecration Demon is Mono Black's best threat against the red deck. It can't be killed by Domri. I mean, it does die to something like Dreadbore, but it's just bigger than all of red-green's creatures. I mean, who's the actual monster here?
It's somehow a bigger monster than Jund Monsters is able to produce. Courser of Krufix revealing a multicolored card of some kind. Domri still being held because, of course, the demon threatening to knock it out in one attack.
So we've updated. So Robert Berni beat Daniel Ward, who was playing Bant. So we have the Mono Black against William Levin, who we just saw win in the Jund Monsters mirror. Whip of Erebos is a pretty nice one here, too.
Yeah, Whip of Erebos looks great here. It's going to give lifelink to the demon, putting Robert Berni at a very safe 24 life. William Levin does find a 5th land with the Courser and a Dreadbore critically.
Yeah, Dreadbore is going to stem the bleeding here. One of the disadvantages to Desecration Demon is that when a game is tight and your opponent can throw away cards to keep it tapped down, it doesn't do much. But when you have a Whip of Erebos and you've gained 6 life, the game's going to go really long and they can't afford to sacrifice.
Okay, Domri comes down now that the threat is neutralized. Courser of Krufix revealing a land, I believe, so no creature to add to William's hand with the Domri. Underworld Connections for Robert, that's huge.
Yeah, Whip and Underworld Connections combine quite nicely. Whip buys you time to use Connections, Connection buys you more creatures to use with Whip, and overall it can lead to a kind of unassailable board state.
And if an Erebos or a Grey Merchant ever shows up, it's also 4 Devotion just sitting there.
Yeah, and now we do get to see the Courser of Krufix Domri combination active, which is a potent combination. Courser clears off lands for Domri, Domri clears off creatures for Courser. Of course, William did hit 2 lands in a row here, so he's just going to +1 and be aware that it's not hitting.
Yeah, Stormbreath Dragon, though, good enough. In come the creatures for 6. Robert is going to drop to 17.
And that indicates that Robert doesn't have Devour Flesh or Doomblade in his hand, or Ultimate Price, any of those removal spells.
Yeah, I think he just drew a Hero's Downfall. That'll deal with the Stormbreath Dragon. Activates Underworld Connections for an extra card. And we'll see if we can get a look at what that extra card is.
Yeah, and given that Hero's Downfall will kill the Stormbreath Dragon, or it could kill the Domri, I mean, depending on what Robert thinks is more threatening here. Robert does have the option of whipping back the demon, but I think William would sacrifice the Courser to stop it from attacking, because otherwise it would just devour Domri. And I think Domri is slightly more valuable than Courser here.
Mutavault could knock 2 counters off Domri.
Yeah, but given you have Hero's Downfall, I'd be more inclined to just kill Domri. Of course, Robert also has Devour Flesh. He could Devour Flesh William, then bring back Demon and give William the choice of losing Stormbreath Dragon or losing Domri. Robert could also Hero's Downfall plus Devour Flesh and kill both of William's creatures, or kill Domri and one of the creatures. The creature, of course, there being the Courser.
Yeah, so a number of different permutations here for Robert, and he is going to take his time to figure out which one he wants to pursue.
What would you lean towards here? Given we have incomplete information, we only know 2 cards in Robert's hand, Devour Flesh and Hero's Downfall.
Yeah, I would eliminate Stormbreath Dragon and try to not worry as much about Domri. So I guess I would go with the Devour and kill both your creatures plan.
Yeah, I think that's what I would lean towards as well. Just because if you do that, and then next turn, the Whip into Demon could just kill Domri by itself. That gives you the highest overall value, I think, from the Whip there.
Yeah, I don't like attacking with Mutavault rather than playing the Devour Flesh once you've activated the whip, once Williams decided to sacrifice a creature. But does the Mutavault attack William? Interesting.
It looks like it may have hit William, with Robert just planning on, Heroes downfalling the Domri. And because of whip, attacking, gains you 2 life.
Wow, so Domri finally does reveal a creature. It's Pelucranos. Stormbreath Dragon, monstrous. Not only does it grow to 7/7, it's going to deal, what, 1 or 2 damage to Robert, depending on his hand
Potentially
size.
even 3 damage, actually, because he's been using that Underworld connection so much.
Yeah, so even though Pelucranos was drawn, William just wants
Actually, it was a hit for 11 total.
Wow. William, so he wanted to get that big, and you see the hand fan out. So that hit was huge. He wanted to get that in while there was a window, and he'll worry about Pelucranos later. Underworld Connections dropping Robert down to 6, giving him an extra card. It's another Underworld Connections. Looking for a Gray Merchant here, if he doesn't already have one.
Yeah, and this is that was the drawback of that play, is you get hit for 11. That's a pretty hefty penalty. That is why I would be more inclined to cast Devour Flesh if that's what he had in his hand. But it does look like Robert's got a number of Gray Merchants in hand, and Gray Merchant's going to do a really good job stabilizing here.
All right, that'll be Gray Merchant for 6 this time around. Robert going up to 12. William dropping down to 7.
Yeah, and technically Domri is getting very close to going ultimate.
It's close, but the other thing that's close is a second Gray Merchant, or this Gray Merchant returned by whip. So there's a couple different ways Robert might be looking to end the game.
Yeah, he could easily end the game off just a couple Gray Merchants here. I mean, the second Gray Merchant's just lethal right now.
The second Gray Merchant's lethal. If you can find another Devotion and get the Gray Merchant in the graveyard, just whipping it back would be lethal.
And I think this might be why he declined to Devour Flesh, is he didn't want to give William a bunch of life. He thought, well, I can just Gray Merchant you out. So Domri is going down to 4, trying to fight the Gray Merchant. In response, the flesh of the dragon gets devoured.
Wow, that's an interesting play, because almost any permanent would let him whip back that Gray Merchant. I might have let my Gray Merchant die there. But Robert, with a plan, playing a long game with both Underworld Connections and Whip of Erebos, if I can eliminate my opponent's threats, it'll be hard for me to lose, and that's the line he's going to pursue. He'll draw another card with Underworld Connections, dropping himself to 11.
And he has enough mana, if he has a land here, which he likely does given how many cards he's drawn, if you can just cast Underworld Connections, then cast Gray Merchant, and drain for the full 8. Once you have 2 Gray Merchants out, with a whip in play, you're in pretty good shape. Looks like he doesn't have the untapped land, though.
So he did have the old Underworld Connection, so he could have let the Gray Merchant die and whipped it back.
Yeah, and then he could and taken a hit off Dragon. Maybe he didn't want to die to Gore Clan Rampager. He could have cast Devour Flesh at that point, but it would have been a little weaker.
Devoured himself.
Could have also done that.
So interesting. Pretty complex game, but Robert's still in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and he's aggressively going after his Underworld Connections. He's got Hero's Downfall in hand, so he's not very worried about the Pelucranos. His Gray Merchant has lifelink. He could even Hero's Downfall the Pelucranos now to get an attack in with the Gray Merchant.
Yeah, and you get a look at William's hand. He's got, 8 land in play, another 2 in his hand. His decision to go down with Domri, that was his decision point on his turn, and I don't know, it might have worked out. It got Robert to use that Devour Flesh.
Yeah, but getting your creature killed in response to Domri is not something you can really be happy about, even though it gets a spell out of their hand. I also would generally want to attack first there to make them either use the removal spell first so you know about it, or if they don't have one, take at least 7 damage first, so that's good getting in there.
Right.
Looks like Domri missed, and then William just played a Stomping Ground. He can't even attack with Pelucranos because the Gray Merchant's more threatening. No, it looks like he's going to. Of course, that opens up Robert to chump to go for that whip there.
Just like we mentioned, Whip of Erebos can bring back Gray Merchant, trigger the ability, and right now it's representing a drain for 8 plus an attack for 2.
Plus the other Gray Merchant in hand.
Oh, wow.
So
if the other Gray Merchant's in hand, then this might end right now.
Yeah, it looks like we're just gonna be able to drain for the full amount here. So looks like Robert has the win here. He's got to decide what he can potentially lose to. I mean, we know that there's no cards in hand that William. He's just got lands in hand, but Robert doesn't know that, so he's laying out his lands, making sure that the Gray Merchants work.
Looks like a third Underworld Connections, increasing his devotion further. Night Veils. I'm not sure he has a second Gray Merchant. He does have the one in the graveyard, and
Oh, it looks like he may not have had the second Gray Merchant. So he's just playing Gray Merchant, playing Night Veil, playing Gray Merchant, draining for.
Well, Pelucanos is going to fight off the Night Veil Spectre in
response.
Wow,
that's pretty awesome. I mean,
that's huge. That's
going monstrous.
That's actually going to keep William alive here. Gray Merchant comes in. It triggers for 10.
Still for 10. 10 is still pretty hefty, and then gets to attack for 2. That was a total of 12 points of draining, putting Robert well above the life he needs to survive the next turn, even though there's an 8/8 Pelucanos bearing down on him.
Robert's going to lose that Gray Merchant to exile since it was returned with Whip. William will untap with both Domri and an 8/8 Pelucanos, and he'll have to draw something to swing the tide. Looks like another land.
And it looks like a land, and William can't be very happy about this.
Reaper of the Wilds will go to the bottom. It doesn't change much. The Spectre's now in the graveyard, threatening to come back for the lethal blow. Because of that Whip and Spectre in graveyard, William is going to scoop up the cards. That's game 1 of your semifinal match. All right, we're back here. Robert Berni was able to take game 1 of this match on the back of Whip of Erebos. That's about as powerful as you're going to see out of that particular card. It gained him a lot of life, and it actually returned Gray Merchant, draining William Levin of 10 life at one point. Here you see William Levin drawing an opening hand. Not a land among them, so he will be mulliganing.
Yeah, and hopefully that Jund Monsters number 5 just shows his top 8 standing, not the number of cards he's going to have in his opening hand here.
Yeah, Robert Berni, our number 1 seed after the Swiss rounds.
Yeah, he actually looks like he went 13-1-1. So presumably he was 12-1, and then he drew, and then he had to play his last round and won.
Yeah, so a very impressive Swiss performance from Robert Berni. What that means is not only that he made the top 8, but he actually gets the chance to play first in every
single match.
Every single game 1 he plays in the top 8. He used that advantage in game 1 to take that game. We're now in game 2, where William Levin is mulliganing back against the wall, trying to get back in it with his Jund Monsters deck. Now, if there's an explosive deck on 6 cards, this is certainly, it only takes a couple cards to spit a monster out there pretty quickly.
Yeah, when we saw Paulo lose to this deck on day 1, his opponent had turn 2 Domri twice, and you don't really need many cards on that. The Domri almost beat Paulo by itself. So
right.
I think if your opening hand is 2 dual lands Elf Domri, you could just run away with the game.
All right, well, he's on the right track. I don't see a red source or a Domri, but I do see 2 Stormbreath Dragons, possibly a Reaper of the Wilds. There's a Thoughtseize.
Yeah, and William does have the Overgrown Tomb, so he can at least cast Thoughtseize here.
All right, so Overgrown Tomb and Thoughtseize will drop William all the way down to 16, but it means he'll get to take, Pack Rat. That's an attractive target.
That's not a lot of lands.
Not a lot of lands. Underworld Connections, Devour Flesh, Night Veil Spectre, Hero's Downfall.
What would you take here? I mean, Pack Rat's the best castable card. My guess is that if William doesn't have a good answer to Pack Rat, he just has to take it.
Yeah, if I'm William, I haven't found a red source of mana yet, so I can't just let Pack Rat, run wild while I try to find my mana.
Yeah.
Even though Robert's trying to find mana himself.
And you're going to get Devour Flesh now. That's the downside, is that that your Elvish Mystic, is going to get messily devoured. That being said, you can't run it out of Pack Rat.
There's a great draw from William. It's not only a red source of mana, it's also a scry land. I think he saw a Mutavault and left it on top.
He left Mutavault on top. I mean, he needs 5 land to hit Stormbreath Dragon. The other one of the 2 left have to be red, so he left a 4th land on top, but
I think he already had a 4th land.
Looked like he actually had a forest in hand.
Yeah, so
yeah, leaving the Mutavault there seems a little risky. He might not be able to play a Stormbreath Dragon on 5 now.
All right, Duress finds no target in 2 Stormbreath Dragon and the forest we just mentioned. So William certainly hoping to draw a red source. And Robert content that he actually drew a swamp to play Underworld Connections, followed by a Duress.
And he did miss a land drop the turn after. So he hit the first swamp, which is by far the most important one, but has stalled on land a little bit after. Though William's also in mana problems of his own. He
Robert
can't cast Stormbreath.
Robert now at 2 cards a turn though. I mean, his mana problems are going to evaporate quickly.
Yeah, and they already basically have.
Yeah. Here we see Thoughtseize, same reveal. This time a Stormbreath Dragon will go to the graveyard.
And then now Robert, he can get a free attack in with Mutavault. He can also leave his Mutavault back to block Mutavault. He might want to keep mana up for a spell as well.
Ooh, Overgrown Tomb. That's not the card you wanted to draw.
Yeah, William's mana base is really punishing him right now.
Desecration Demon. applying pressure. Okay, William's drawn a Blood Crypt. It's gonna give him a red mana at the price of 2 life. There's Stormbreath Dragon. Not big enough at the moment to deal with the demon, but potentially monstrous later.
Yeah, and Stormbreath Dragon Go is not something you're really happy about, especially since Robert has just a grip full of Hero's Downfalls, and Willie knows that. I mean, he saw his hand with Thoughtseize.
Yeah, there's no... At 2 cards a turn, it's going to be real tough on William. He activates Mutavault and feeds the demon, stopping the attack for 1 turn.
But Robert's in pretty firm control of this game. I mean, he gets to Hero's Downfall the Dragon. He's drawing with Underworld Connections. He's still at 12. He's not that low of life. This is a slightly risky line, though. He decided not to Hero's Downfall the Dragon, so now William can play a 7th land and attack. He knows Robert has Hero's Downfall. He just doesn't Monstrous. Now when Robert goes to Monstrous, William at least gets to hit him for a number of cards in hand.
Yeah, so Robert doesn't have a window to Downfall and not get Monstrous in response. He has a tough decision. End step, he's going to go ahead and take the damage anyways. So there's Hero's Downfall. In response, the dragon becomes monstrous, will knock Robert all the way down to, I think, 6 or 7.
Yeah, that was a solid punch. I mean, that was like a 4 or 5 damage Stormseeker.
All the way down to 6. All right. So seemingly in control of the game is Robert, although at only 6 life. A Grey Merchant could change things. He'll start with Nightvale Spectre.
Yeah, and Robert doesn't have another land here. If William just had like a Fireball, he'd be in pretty good shape. Can I get a Blaze just one time?
Yeah, the closest thing in this format to a Fireball out of the Jund Monsters deck, some of them play Mistcutter Hydra.
Oh, that would be nice.
Wouldn't quite be a Fireball here. Oh, actually, it would be.
Because Nightvale Spectre's blue.
Nightvale Spectre's blue. So, but he did not draw the green Fireball.
I actually saw one of the Jund Monsters players playing, who made day 2, Will Hockman, playing Clan Defiance in his Jund Monsters deck.
Well, that's even closer to a Fireball.
That is actually a Fireball, yeah.
All right, there's Xenagos, the Reveler, making a Satyr token. Haste is no help since the Nightvale Spectre is 2/3.
At least Xenagos can stop Desecration Demon from attacking. Robert does have the 5th land now. He is going to be able to play a Grey Merchant, and he can drain for what looks like 9 damage here. You might as well attack with Nightvale Spectre.
Here comes Nightvale Spectre. All right, land, Grey Merchant, and we're going to see Robert Berni advance to the finals of Grand Prix Phoenix.
Yeah, Mono Black is one of the decks that we've got in the finals now. Robert Berni advances #1 seed, and we have Nathan Holiday against Gary Wong, the real Gary Wong this time, we swear, in the Blue Devotion matchup, and it looks like Nathan Holiday is down a game, because I believe this is game 2. So
okay, so we weren't able to bring you game 1, but in game 1, Gary Wong was... did prevail?
Yeah, that's I believe so. So
Nathan won game 1. That's okay. That's what I thought, because that's why you see Gary Wong on the play here in game 2.
Correct.
So Nathan's won the first game. Gary does have a quick start in the second game with off Tidebinder Mage and Thassa.
Though Nathan has a good start too. I mean, Cloudfin Raptor into Frostburn Weird is pretty much your ideal start. And unfortunately for Gary, since he was in the play, his Tidebinder Mage doesn't get to lock down Frostburn Weird, which is something that happens often in the mirror.
All right, Nathan doesn't have a way to evolve the Cloudfin Raptor, it looks like. He's just going to attack for 1. Gary dropping to 18. Wow, no third land, no follow-up play.
That's going to be tough because Gary has Gainsay in hand. He's got a Thassa down. It doesn't take much to activate Thassa here.
You fall a couple turns behind in a mirror match like this, there might not be any coming back.
Yeah, especially since...
But, you know what? Gary didn't have a 4th land.
He took no actions on his turn except scrying. So we could see a fight between 2 kind of resource-challenged players, though I've got to say Gary's really far ahead here. He's got an extra land, and he's got a Thassa scrying each turn.
There we see Gainsay coming in and countering Tidebinder Mage. I think Gary not wanting to have Cloudfin Raptor evolve, but also wanting to just use that mana now and hopefully be able to tap out the following turns. There you do see him tap out Master of Waves. It's going to be 4 elemental tokens, excuse me.
Yeah, and
with only 2 mana for Nathan, he's gonna quickly become overwhelmed if he doesn't find a 3rd land and something to do.
Yeah, I think Nathan's in trouble if he misses his land here. If he hit 2 sequential lands, he could do something like Domestication Master of Waves, which would be huge. It would kill all the elementals. But given that he's not playing a land this turn, he's in a pretty hairy situation. could also get in for one with Cloudfin Raptor, but that's about the extent of things.
It's amazing how much of his how much of the screen he takes up when he leans forward, Nathan. He's really covered,
yeah.
Covers up half his permanence. All right, there you see him lean back. He's only got 2
and
islands.
Unfortunately for him, half his permanence is 2 cards.
Exactly. That's really the focal point of the board right now, that he's only been able to find 2 islands. Gary missed a land drop, but then made up for it the following turn with a 4th land drop and a Master of Waves.
Yeah, and like you said before, Gary would have gainsaved just about any spell, just to use his mana. He knows he's going to tap out if he hits a land, which he's hoping to do. And he knows that getting on the board is something Nathan's going to have trouble doing, considering he's got very few castable spells.
Here's one of those spells, Cyclonic Rift.
And this is an act of desperation more than anything else. All it does is delay the inevitable here.
Gary will scry again. It's Jace, Architect of Thought.
And that's not a bad card. I don't know if he wants it. I guess it's worth taking.
Yeah, he'll take it.
I mean, you could play Jace and attack with Thassa. He looks like Gary's just going to play Master of Waves while he can.
All right, Nathan will draw a card again, looking for a 3rd land.
Yeah, if he doesn't hit a land this turn, I mean, last turn he was in trouble. This turn he's even more trouble. Looks like he does have the land.
He has hit an island. Hitting that island means he can choose between one of his 2 Thasses in his hands or one of his 2 Nightveil Specters. He'll start with Nightveil Specter. That's a creature that not only blocks an Elemental or a Master of Waves, but makes Cloudfin Raptor evolve, and it is also able to block.
Yeah, having the Spectre out gives Nathan a lot of interesting plays next turn, especially if he draws a land, and it makes Thassa active right away.
Wow, a 2nd Master of Waves.
And now we see why Gary was in such a hurry to play the first one again.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's going to turn on Thassa's Devotion. It's going to make all Elementals in play 3/2s, because each Master of Waves is going to give +1/+1.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, those blocks that Nathan set up,
no good. He can block 1 with a Frostburn Weird, and then take 14 damage off Thassa plus 3 Elemental tokens. That seems like it's a pretty tough spot.
Yeah, the only thing Nathan should be thinking about here is what to maybe sideboard for game 3. He just doesn't have much of a chance to come back. Nykthos off the top makes things a little bit interesting, but nah, still nothing doing.
Nykthos puts him up to 7 mana, but unfortunately he used a Cyclonic Rift already. And because Gary has double Master of Waves out, even if he loses a Master of Waves, his Elementals still live. He has 9 of them.
Yeah, you're right. He would have had to somehow save that Cyclonic Rift and then draw Nykthos. He wasn't able to save Cyclonic Rift because he just had to use it to stay alive.
Yeah, this would have happened last turn, and Nathan would have already been dead if he didn't use the Cyclonic Rift.
So 4 Elementals are attacking, 5 Elementals remain untapped.
So it looks like he's trading for trading for an Elemental, blocking an Elemental, and taking 11 here, which is going to drop Nathan to 9, and his board state is degraded to the point where there's not much more he can do.
Maybe one reason to keep playing, maybe your opponent will show you one of the cards they sideboard. I don't know.
Yeah.
You have access to deck lists here in the top 8. All right, so there.
Nathan, he's just getting the information off Nightveil Spectre.
Yeah, so that's all that was going on. Maybe I can see a card or 2. All right, welcome back to our coverage of the semifinals of Grand Prix Phoenix, presented by Channel Fireball. I'm Matt Sperling. I'm joined in the booth by Luis Scott Vargas. This is game 3. 2 mono blue decks. A little splash of white for Gary Wong, who does get things started with the Cloudfin Raptor.
And the fact that he's got a 1-drop and Nathan doesn't is pretty big. I mean, Nathan could have still a very good hand, but not having a 1-drop
or a 2-drop, wow.
I'd be sight unseen. I'm sure that Nathan has domestication in his hand. That's one of the few cards, or at least I would wager that it's very likely.
Or he may have mulliganed. We joined on turn 1. There may have been a couple mulligans. Gainsay on Nightveil Spectre, that's huge. But Cloudfin Raptor hasn't yet evolved. Temple of Enlightenment. So you see the benefit of the scry. You also see the drawback of coming into play tapped. So always a double-edged sword with adding scry lands to your monocolor deck.
And you see that Gary Wong here has chosen not to attack with Mutavault multiple turns in a row. I mean, or not multiple turns in a row. He couldn't attack turn 2, but on turn 3 he could have attacked. This indicates he's got another Gainsay in hand. So if you're Nathan, knowing that Gary's at the very least representing Gainsay, it's interesting to see which spell you play. I mean, you've got to play a spell. You can't never play a spell.
Yeah.
But you do have to choose which is the one you're most likely to get countered, or which is the one you don't mind getting countered.
Yeah. So Nathan having to play in one of these post sideboard games, the decks can start to resemble a much more controlling game plan. Nathan plays a 4th land and passes back. So both players playing a draw-go-ish strategy.
And this is something you really only see post-board. Neither player has attacked before turn 5.
Tidebinder Mage on the stack for Gary. You can see him asking permission here of Nathan, who has 4 mana untapped.
I mean, it's not an exciting card to counter, but now Gary gets to attack with Cloudfin Raptor and have a 2/2 on the board. It does mean Nathan's got to do something.
Gary still having a blue and 1 untapped in case he wants to cast Gainsay.
Nathan might also be setting up a turn of Night Veil Spectre plus Gainsay.
Here's Night Veil Spectre.
Let's see if Gary has the actual Gainsay or he's just bluffing it by not attacking with Mutavault.
There is the Gainsay. And a Gainsay back, so you called it. Nathan choosing to wait to cast Night Veil Spectre until he could have his own Gainsay protection up. He wins the minor counter war, the counter skirmish.
Yeah.
And the Night Veil Spectre is a huge development here. Tidebinder Mage, further evolving Cloudfin Raptor, at least that's a blocker.
Yeah, so Gary may not be able to attack anymore because the Night Veil Spectre is shutting down his offense. But the second Tidebinder Mage means the Night Veil Spectre actually can't attack him. If Nathan has something like Domestication your Cloudfin Raptor, attack with a Night Veil Spectre, that could be big. And it probably impacts how Gary scries. Do you scry something really good to the top knowing it's at risk because of the Night Veil Spectre? I feel like you probably have to keep it, but it is a risk.
It's definitely a risk. Gary choosing to scry to the bottom of the deck, so there's no Night Veil Spectre sub-game that we can see yet.
I have definitely not attacked on Night Veil Spectres against someone who scryed a card to the top against a Night Veil Spectre.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's something that comes up against people that are scrying when you've got Night Veil Spectre. If they scry and immediately put their land back on top so you can take it, you can just not attack. Rapid hybridization for Nathan is going to kill the Cloudfin Raptor. So it's going to target the Cloudfin Raptor. That way Night Veil Spectre can start getting through.
So Nathan finds himself behind on board in terms of, there's 2 2/2s and a 3/3, but getting to hit with Night Veil Spectre is big, and now we see one of the combos of the deck. Nathan's going to probably follow this up with a Tidebinder Mage.
Ooh, Night Veil Spectre, that is huge.
That might be too juicy of a target. Nathan might just have to cast his own Night Veil Spectre.
Wow, that's huge. He couldn't have done much better than that off the top of Gary's deck. He has Tidebinder Mage that you mentioned. If he wants to tap down Frog Lizard, you see him head in hands, thinking over whether he wants to add Night Veil Spectre or Tidebinder Mage to the board.
And I like just running the Night Veil Spectre. It still prevents 4 damage off the Tidebinder Mages. It gives you the most value. This way, even if your Night Veil Spectre's dealt with, you have 2. You can't really lose if you have 2 Night Veil Spectres going, barring something very good off Gary's side of the board.
Yeah, at 19 life, Nathan will just take the 3 from the Lizard. He can always play the Tidebinder Mage next turn. All right, so Gary has played a couple creatures.
He gets to
None of them stop Night Veil Spectre, though.
No, he plays Cloudfin Raptor. He's going to play a Thassa, which will now evolve the Raptor. But we're looking at 2 solid Night Veil hits here. And Nathan considering, he's got a Cyclonic Rift in hand, and he can play it there. So he's considering casting Rift here. He could, I guess he could bounce a Tidebinder Mage to stop Thassa from evolving Cloudfin Raptor.
But would he rather overload the Cyclonic Rift? You'd have to think he's looking at overloading that.
That seems much more powerful here.
With 2 Night Veil Spectres, he hits the island. So there's the 7th land.
This is pretty bad for Gary. Getting hit for 4 damage and 2 cards a turn is really big.
It's huge. And, with only 5 lands out, should the Cyclonic Rift get overloaded, there's 2 lands. In case Nathan didn't draw one, there's 2 lands.
Well, that's actually a point in favor in Gary's favor. Now he doesn't have to draw those lands. He would not have been happy to draw either of those lands. He would have gotten to scry 1 off Thassa, but...
Well, I don't think he's going to get to scry 1. He might be getting rifted here.
Yeah, that's true.
Nathan thinking about whether, I think maybe rift now, rift later.
He also has to consider whether he wants to play Hallowed Fountain and pay 2 life, or play an island. Because if he plays the Hallowed Fountain, he has access to white spells, but he would have to pay 2 life this turn, and that might not be worth it ultimately. I think there's a pretty high chance that he gets to play Hallowed Fountain next turn if he really wants to. So I'd probably be fine with just playing Island. I also like Cyclonic Rifting while your opponent can't counter it, especially since this turn, otherwise you're going to take way too much damage if you don't.
Yeah, Cloudfin Raptor, though, once you bounce it, it will get to evolve a couple times and become a blocker. So this is not an obvious play by any stretch. Nathan taking his time, thinking over whether rifting maybe during the opponent's next end step.
Yeah, that might work better. If Gary finds a gainsay, you're in big trouble though. If Gary finds a gainsay, you take a lot of damage.
That's exactly right. Nathan's with 2 gainsays in Gary's graveyard. Nathan willing to take the chance that there's probably only a 3rd gainsay in the deck. There may be a dispel, so Nathan's willing to risk it in order to get the Cyclonic Rift that really sets Gary back.
Yeah, and Gary has 3 gainsays, 2 negates plus dispel. But we don't know how many of the dispels and negates he boarded in.
Okay, so Cyclonic Rift happening, I guess, perhaps during upkeep after the scry resolve.
So it looks like Nathan wanted to wait till Gary scried, so Gary would not know that he was getting rifted here, which I like. You can't take this hit. I don't think you can take a hit for 13 or whatever it ends up being. So given that you're forced to cast it when Gary attacks, you might as well cast it on upkeep after the scry. So again, this does give Gary the window to play Cloudfin Raptor and potentially evolve it twice if he has another blue source.
Oh, he doesn't.
That's really tough for Gary, because not only does Nathan just take 2 this turn, Gary's getting hit by 2 Night Veil Specters again. Nathan's seeing 3 new cards.
Yeah, you can't keep this up for long. A gainsay for Nathan Holiday, the perfect draw to kind of cement his lead.
Yeah, once you have the 2 Specters going, you're going to win if nothing happens, and gainsay prevents Gary from doing anything too exciting.
All right, but Nathan not only has his draw step, he also has 2 hits from Night Veil Specter, Mutavault, and Detention Sphere. Hallowed Fountain being the other card underneath Night Veil Specter. Detention Sphere is a card Nathan could cast if he wants to.
And Nathan not choosing to play Hallowed Fountain last turn means he can't play Mutavault this turn if he wants to cast Detention Sphere, which is a kind of funny parlay to happen to make you wish he played Hallowed Fountain. But
I don't think he's gonna lose much sleep.
No, I think he's not gonna lose much sleep or this game over it.
Yeah.
So Nathan didn't attack with Mutavault there. He didn't want to trade it for Tidebinder Mage. He gets to play his own Tidebinder Mage and potentially just gainsay the Thassa, which puts him in a pretty good spot. He could also not gainsay the Thassa and just save Detention Sphere for it.
Yeah, there's really there isn't a line that Nathan could take here that doesn't put him in a commanding position. Having both Night Veil Specters, access to Detention Sphere, gainsay in hand. Gary still with only 5 lands can't really do too many huge plays, although he does have Thassa in his hand.
It looks like Nathan's going to play Detention Sphere. If you played an untapped Hallowed Fountain, that's like really the only play. He might just kill the Cloudfin Raptor now.
Yeah.
I guess he assumes it's going to be a problem next turn. He's going to, at this point, I would expect him to play Tidebinder Mage and then leave Dispel or Mutavault or Gainsay or Mutavault activation up.
Yeah, and the way he's played it, he doesn't need to even counter Thassa, right? So he does have a Gainsay if he wants to counter Thassa, but there's no pressing need because that Cloudfin Raptor is gone. There's only 2 Devotion for Gary.
So Gary now facing down double Night Veil Specter. He found his own Night Veil Specter, but it's a little too late, and Nathan's got to be happy to gainsay this.
There it is. Gainsay on the Night Veil Specter, maintaining his 2-0 advantage in Night Veil Specters. What does that advantage mean? It means instead of drawing 1 card per turn, he's essentially drawing 3 cards every turn.
Yeah, and because this is the mirror, they're all castable. He even hit a Thassa on his draw step. So Nathan deciding whether he wants to attack with Mutavault. He's so far ahead here that he's happy when cards trade. He's basically locked into having Devotion for the rest of the game, enough to activate Thassa. So he just wants to get that Tidebinder Mage off Gary Wong's side of the board.
Yeah, if Gary Wong's going to come back, it's going to be probably on the back of another Detention Sphere. If he can draw another Detention Sphere, all of a sudden the Night Veil Specter problem would go away. That's another reason for Nathan to maybe apply a little bit more pressure.
Yeah, to give Gary Wong less draw steps. Since, I mean, Nathan is going to win the game if nothing happens, but Gary does have cards like Detention Sphere, which do provide a swingy effect. So Nathan is going to hit here. He's so far hit land every single Night Veil trigger except 1, but that's still enough. I mean, he's still getting to play Detention Spheres and free Mutavaults, and that combined with the fact that Gary, got hit by an overloaded Cyclonic Rift is enough to put Gary pretty firmly behind. Gary also drops to 6 here. Nathan, deciding not to attack with his Tidebinder and Mutavault, happy enough to just let things lie. And also welcome Huey Jensen back to the booth here. We've got our finals team ready to go with myself and Huey finishing out this Grand Prix.
Hey everybody, glad to be back. Excited to crown a champion.
You do sound very excited. I guess I'll break first.